This is the B-2 Spirit, a massive flying wing with a 172-foot wingspan and a 40,000-pound weapon payload. At a cost of over $2 billion each, it is the most expensive flying vehicle ever built by humanity. It carries 167,000 pounds of fuel and possesses enough stealth to penetrate the toughest defenses on Earth. But the real story isn't in the final strike, but in the ruthless system behind it. The process of creating this destructive power doesn't begin on the runway. It begins in the hardened bunkers of the 509th Munitions Squadron. The temperature inside the assembly area is strictly locked at 68 degrees F. This isn't a luxury for the humans, but a vital condition to protect sensitive electronics. Dust and humidity are the #1 enemies of the JDAM Guidance Kit, the system that turns free-falling bombs into smart weapons with absolute precision. A single tiny speck of dust can ruin micro-circuit boards during installation. The centerpiece of this process is the KMU 55 tail kit. This is the brain that will turn a steel block filled with explosives into a weapon with meter-level accuracy. Once the nose and body of the bomb are ready, they proceed to install the tail kit. Each control fin on this tail section is independently controlled by a microelectric motor. The precision of these control fins is calibrated to 0.1 degrees. The slightest deviation will throw the bomb's trajectory completely off course. Imagine if a control fin gets stuck for just half a second while falling. The bomb would miss its target by at least 100 feet, causing unintended collateral damage. Even the bomb's weight must be rigorously checked. A deviation of just 5 pounds from the standard specification will cause the ballistic computer to miscalculate the release time. Each bomb, once assembled, is assigned a unique identification code. This code is entered directly into the aircraft's weapons database for synchronization. At this point, the fuses are not yet powered, and the thermal battery remains in a dormant state. The 2,000-pound bomb is now nothing more than an incredibly expensive iron dart. It sounds absurd, but in that moment, the most terrifying thing on the B-2 is lying obediently still, like a piece of cargo whose shift hasn't started yet. The compulsory safety process prevents any premature activation before release. Any mechanical errors are eliminated during the final quality control phase. The bomb transport trailers must also maintain their own climate control systems. The weapons must be kept in an optimal state until they are loaded into the B-2's belly bay. If the bomb requires mechanical perfection, the entire body of the B-2 requires electromagnetic perfection. Stealth is not just a glossy coat of paint, it is a battle against physics. Radar absorbent material RAM coating covers the massive surface area of the B-2. It contains ferromagnetic particles capable of converting radar wave energy into thermal energy. On the B-2, this is a specialized material system consisting of a composite substrate, radar-absorbing coatings, gap-filling materials, conductive tape, and tightly controlled surface. Finishes designed to keep the entire aircraft as a seamless electromagnetic block. Any interruption on this surface turns the $2 billion aircraft into a bright blip on an enemy radar screen. Hail, tiny dust particles, or even insect carcasses colliding at high speeds can create scratches. These scratches disrupt the electromagnetic absorbing structure of the aircraft's surface. The most sensitive areas are the leading edges of the wings and the engine air intakes. These are the places where radar waves are most easily reflected back to their source. A gap between panels, as wide as a credit card, is an engineering disaster. It creates electromagnetic scattering, revealing the aircraft's position from hundreds of miles away. Stealth maintenance technicians must use specialized conductive tape to seal every seam. Afterward, they apply a special gap-filling compound to ensure absolute seamlessness. Temperature and humidity in the maintenance hangar must be controlled for the coating to cure properly. Once dry, the surface is hand-sanded to tolerances smaller than the thickness of a human hair. Routine access panels must frequently be removed to inspect internal systems. Each time they are reinstalled, the ceiling and radar scattering inspection process must start all over again. The air intake of the F118 GE100 engine was designed in a serpentine shape to conceal the propeller blades. If the inner surface of the air duct peels, it becomes a radar beacon, signaling the aircraft's location. The B-2 remains the only stealth strategic bomber platform currently capable of active combat. While the B-21 Raider is under development, maintaining the B-2 surface is a top priority for the U.S. Air Force. Continuous modernization programs help the B-2 update to newer, more durable radar-absorbent materials. However, the grueling nature of maintaining stealth never changes. When the aircraft rolls out of the hangar, it is an electromagnetically uniform block. What keeps the B-2 invisible isn't a myth, it's a surface, forced to be perfect to an almost inhuman degree. At a maximum takeoff weight of 336,500 pounds, the 40,000-pound weapon payload accounts for only about 12%. Meanwhile, fuel alone amounts to 167,000 pounds, nearly half the entire mass of the aircraft. That completely changes how the B-2 is understood. It is not a machine built around bombs. It is a system built around carrying a massive block of energy through enemy airspace, maintaining absolute stability for a tailless flying structure, and dedicating only a small fraction of that mass to firepower. And that is also why any deviation, even just a few pounds of fuel or a minor change in mass distribution, can directly affect the controllability of the entire aircraft. And exactly because fuel is the largest portion of its mass, the next stage for the B-2 is no longer loading bombs, but balancing a massive block of energy to prepare for an intercontinental mission. However, what defines the B-2 is not just how much fuel it carries, but how its shape dictates. That fuel must be distributed with exact precision. The B-2 is a pure flying wing design. It's practically nothing but the wing itself, entirely lacking a vertical tail, like conventional aircraft. That wasn't an aesthetic choice. It was a ruthless decision to reduce radar reflection. A traditional tail fin is practically a giant billboard bouncing back radar waves, so for deep stealth, engineers were forced to eliminate it. But the price they paid was stripping away one of the aircraft's most important natural sources of stability. From that moment on, the B-2 was no longer an easy plane to fly, in the traditional sense. It became a sensitive aerodynamic structure, where if the center of gravity shifted uncontrollably, even slightly, its entire handling characteristics would change. If the fuel between the two wings became unbalanced, the aircraft would react differently immediately. If the center of gravity shifted too far forward, it would become nose-heavy and struggle to take off. If the center of gravity shifted too far back, pitch control at low speeds would become dangerous. The automated fuel management system must work continuously to balance the liquid mass between the tanks. Crews must closely monitor pressure and flow gauges to detect any abnormal signs early. The B-2's service ceiling is top secret, but it is high enough that a loss of pressurization would be fatal. The suit must tightly compress the pilot's chest at the right moment so blood doesn't drain from the brain during maneuvers. The most unique piece is the helmet, which costs more than a house. It doesn't just integrate a HUD and night vision goggles. Its visor can shift from transparent to pitch black in mere milliseconds, faster than the human eye's reflex to register pain, in order to protect the pilot's vision from the blinding flash of a nuclear explosion. After gearing up, the two-person crew steps into the cockpit. They connect their oxygen systems, radios, and perform a final check of their life support equipment. A standard B-2 mission can last up to 40 continuous hours with multiple mid-air refuelings. Therefore, the readiness of the life support systems is critically important. The avionics boot-up sequence begins with aligning the ring laser gyros. This process takes exactly 8 minutes and requires the aircraft to remain absolutely motionless. Any shaking or movement during this time will skew the inertial navigation system. This is the backbone that helps the B-2 determine its position without relying entirely on GPS. Once aligned, military GPS data is uploaded to synchronize coordinates. At this point, the flight control computers start taking over the movable surfaces. Because it has no vertical tail, the B-2 uses split drag rudders at the wingtips for yaw control. When turning, one side's drag rudder will split open to create drag, pulling the aircraft to turn in that direction. The elevons on the trailing edge of the wings handle roll and pitch control. All of these surfaces are controlled by a fly-by-wire system because a human cannot directly stabilize a tailless flying wing. The computers must execute thousands of adjustments per second to keep the aircraft from tumbling. If the flight control system fails, the B-2 will instantly turn into a free-falling block of iron. At that point, no human skill can save it. Inside the B-2, the cockpit is organized like a systems management center where the crew monitors flight status, fuel distribution, mission data, and the flight computer's responses through multifunction displays. In other words, pilots do not keep the aircraft in the air by the feel of the stick in the traditional sense. They monitor an inherently unstable aerodynamic structure, then issue commands to an intermediary layer of computers to keep it within safe limits. The B-2 is a high subsonic platform, but it can climb to a service ceiling of 50,000 feet. At that altitude, it is out of reach of most short and medium-range air defense systems. The synergy between man and machine begins the second the aircraft leaves the ground. All parameters regarding angle of attack, airspeed, and wing loading are visually displayed on the multifunction screens. Even while still on the ground, steering the B-2 is already a challenge. The distance from the nose gear to the main landing gear is up to 110 feet, forcing the pilots to calculate extremely wide turning radii. But the issue doesn't stop at the turning radius. With a tailless flying wing structure and an extremely sensitive center of gravity, all movements on the ground must be precisely controlled. If the pilot steers too sharply or mishandles the inertia, the entire 300,000-plus pound mass will continue sliding in its original direction. While taxiing to the runway, the aircraft reaches its maximum takeoff weight of 336,500 pounds. The 4F118 GE100 engines roar, generating a total thrust of 69,200 pounds to lift this colossal block of steel into the air. Taking off at a heavy weight requires a long runway and precision in calculating V1 speed. If an engine failure occurs, at this stage, the pilot has only seconds to make a life or death decision. Past that point, you no longer have a choice. The plane is going to fly, whether you are ready or not. Upon flying into the combat zone, the B-2 approaches the designated drop point. Now, the crew selects the required weapon type on the control screen. The rotary launcher activates, bringing the bomb precisely into the ready position, right at the moment of release. The bomb's brain is truly awakened via the umbilical cable. In those few short seconds, the bomb receives all GPS coordinates, data on wind speed, atmospheric pressure, and time to target. It is also loaded with angle of attack parameters to optimize penetration capability. The drop command is executed, and pneumatic pistons propel the bomb out of the aircraft's belly. Immediately, the internal thermal battery is activated, supplying power to the guidance system, and the fuse begins its arming sequence. The bomb begins searching for satellite signals to acquire a GPS lock. If the enemy jams the GPS, the Internal Inertial Navigation System, INS, automatically takes over to maintain the target. The margin of error with GPS is only about 10 meters and around 30 meters using just inertial guidance. The tail fins work continuously, making increasingly smaller corrections until direct impact with the target. The bomb bay doors snap shut immediately, returning the B-2 to its perfect stealth shape. The entire attack sequence occurs in silence, with absolutely no radio signals emitting from the aircraft. Even though the B-21 Raider is being developed to gradually replace it in the future, its initial operating capability milestone isn't expected until 2028. Until then, the B-2 Spirit remains the irreplaceable iron fist of global deterrence strategy. The true power of the B-2 doesn't lie solely in its flying wing shape or the final bomb drop. It lies in a system of maintenance, inspection, data loading, refueling, flight control, and technical discipline that must all operate perfectly at the same time. If you enjoy videos that explain straight up how military systems actually operate, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, what do you think is the most terrifying part of the B-2? The stealth, the maintenance process, or the moment the bomb wakes up only at the very last second?